when I decided to go for this conference, I knew that I wanted to have one person here who's been around this understanding, this paradigm for a long time, since the very early days. And there are several well-known. I don't know. The expression I like to use is first generation. I don't know if that gets. I don't. Okay. I have a better one. The lucky generation. The ones that are lucky because they were able to learn about this understanding directly from the person who discovered this, from Sid Banks himself, for many years. And so I wanted to have one person here who can really has been around this for many years and really sees it deeply and can put it in a way that you get the sense, you see that the depth of understanding they have. And so there are many people out there, but there was one particular one that kind of like it was clear to me that I wanted that person here, and I was really fortunate that he was able to come. So Dicken, I just asked him like when was it exactly that you kind of first came across this, and it was in 96, right? 86, sorry, yeah, 86. So 29 years ago. 29 years ago, he went to the first event where someone was speaking about this stuff. And since then, it has had, we're probably going to hear about some stories from the years, maybe not. I have no idea. I don't know if he knows about this kind of stuff. But yeah, so with great honor, I get to introduce Dr. Dicken.bettinger.
It's true. You've just disappeared. Nico, thank you. Not just for the introduction, your very kind words, but thank you for pulling together all these wonderful people. Oh, there you are. Now I can see. Hi. I want to thank Lada and Paul, too, for putting up with me. I mean, putting me up at their home. This is the first time I've been in Finland, and I can tell you I honestly am falling in love with Finland. What a beautiful, beautiful country. It reminds me of several places in the United States that are my absolute favorite places. So it's great to be here, and what a day we had yesterday. I got to, what's the name of the little town, Lada? Inko. We went into Inko, parked the car, walked down to the marina, walked along the ocean, sat back in on a dock, just took in the beauty, came back, went and had lunch at her folks' house, and then her dad took us in a little boat out to an island in the archipelago. Magic, that's all I can say. All I can say, magic, just absolutely beautiful. Went swimming. I can tell people I went swimming in Finland. I think I have the best job in the world. Fortunately, a lot of people are hungry for the same things that I was hungry for. People all over the world are really hungry to learn more about well-being. And it's a beautiful, beautiful message that you already have well-being. Every one of you. Perfect, perfect, perfect well-being. You always do, you always will have. And it just gets covered over by layers and layers of thinking. And not only does it get covered over by layers of thinking, but at a certain point you start thinking that the thinking that layers over your well-being is true. Mm-hmm. You take any person in this world who's troubled psychologically. If they did not believe that what they were thinking was true, they wouldn't be troubled. There would be no mental illness. And I've seen that firsthand many, many times. I became licensed as a psychologist. I had been practicing for 10 years. And so I've had an opportunity, or I was practicing for 10 years when I came across these principles. And I had never found anything that was so simple and yet so profound and so immediately helpful to me. And then I was very fortunate, as Nico said, I was very fortunate to be able to meet a man named Sydney Banks. And I hope that if you haven't had an opportunity to hear Sid talk about the principles, that at some point you go online and Google his name, and there are lots and lots of videos, or go to my friends Rudy and Jenny Kennard's website, 3 Principles Movies, and they have video clips of Sid talking. Really, really quite remarkable what happened to this man. An ordinary guy. He was a welder with a 9th grade education. He didn't read books. He was a very hard worker. Had a very difficult life growing up. So he was very insecure and had quite a temper. And one day he was walking with a man on the beach, and Sid was telling this man how difficult his life was because he was so insecure. And at some point the man said to him, "Sid, you're not insecure. You just think you are." And in that moment, he said it was like an explosion went off inside of him. And he had the realization, or he had the insight, that every single bit of his unhappiness and insecurity and anger and frustration was just a temporary thought-created experience that had no substance, right? When I get really anxious, at some point when I stop thinking about it, that thinking goes away and it doesn't even exist. It's not inside me. It's not being created. Right? Could you imagine if you realized that there isn't a single bit of your unhappiness or stress or insecurity that has any substance to it? It's just a temporary thought-created experience. That's very powerful. Your unhappiness is an illusion that you can wake up from. You know, just like you can be in a very bad dream, you can think all of that thinking is true. You can be having a nightmare. All right? You're being chased by a bear and you're terrified and you feel like you're in mud and you can't run and the bear is getting closer and closer. And then you wake up and you go, "Thank God that was only a dream." Right? And you wake up and you're in a different reality. You wake up and all of that fear begins to dissipate. Right? The good news is, well, maybe the bad news first. We're having these kind of little nightmares all day long. Right? I call them daymares. Oh, what are they going to think? Oh, how am I going to do? Oh, I can't believe that person cut right in front of me. Oh, God, this is so hard. Right? These are little thought-created dreams that we're having, that we haven't woken up from. And you wake up from it and you go, oh, that's just a thought. No substance. It's like smoke or a cloud. Right? One time on educational television I saw they had a cloud chamber, and it was a little box about this big. And they could turn some dials and it would change the temperature and the moisture content within the box, and all of a sudden this beautiful little cloud formed out of nothing. I said, oh, that is so cute. You can have your own little pet cloud. And then they turned the dial and then the cloud just disappeared. Right? Every feeling and every thought you've ever had is just a cloud. It takes form, and at some point it disappears and you have a different thought and a different feeling. Now, as people have been talking about this morning, it is incredibly helpful to any person, anywhere, when they begin to realize that whatever you're feeling is just a temporary thought-created experience that comes and goes naturally, no big deal. It's not who you are. It's just a temporary little cloud. We all have weather. It's normal. You can't not have weather. I feel anxious. I feel stressed. It's helpful for me to know it's just a temporary creation. A number of people asked me before coming up here, are you nervous? And I said, yeah. Oh. They said, yeah, but I don't care anymore. Doesn't mean anything. Right? It's just a little thought cloud. And then it comes and then it goes. Anger, a little thought cloud, it comes and then it goes. But what a difference it makes where you think it comes from. If you don't know that it's a normal, temporary, thought-created experience, and you're going to continue to have all kinds of experiences, no matter how enlightened you become, you still have weather. Right? That what a difference it makes, though, where you think it comes from, because if you don't know that it's a temporary, thought-created experience, you're going to be blaming something or somebody. You know who was really happy when I learned these principles? My wife. And I'm going, oh, it's no fun anymore. I can't blame you for how I'm feeling. It took the fun out of a lot of things. I couldn't blame the traffic for being irritated. Right? I couldn't say that my kids were driving me crazy. It's really the birth of self-responsibility. The birth of self-responsibility is that my experience is coming from me. It's being created from thought. It takes blame. Could you imagine if you took blame out of the psychological system of people in the world, where people would stop blaming one another for their feelings? That alone would completely transform this world. Completely. It would be the end of justified anger toward other people. I'm angry, I'm experiencing my thinking. I'm afraid, I'm experiencing my thinking. I feel hurt, I'm experiencing my thinking. It's extremely empowering for people to begin to realize and understand, as people have been saying, that there's only one source for whatever we're feeling or experiencing. Just one. It's all being created from the power that knows how to generate and create human experience. when my daughter was 14. She had her first big insight about where her feelings came from. She had been very sort of sensitive, was the word people use, very sensitive, because she would, if I said she couldn't do something, she might be upset for 2 days. Well, she's just really sensitive. After she started to understand that her upset wasn't coming from Dad saying no, it was coming from how she was thinking about what Dad said. Suddenly, she stopped being upset for days at a time. She says, Dad, I can't stay upset even if I want to, because I know it's just my own thinking now. Isn't that interesting? 14 years old. And she's telling me, Dad, I still have low moods. And I said, well, of course you do, sweetie. You always will. Everybody does. It's just weather. She says, yeah, but it never lasts for more than about 10 minutes. Isn't that interesting? She went right past me. Right? She'd come home from school and I'd say, what are you seeing? What are you seeing about thought? And she'd go, oh, Dad, you won't believe it. All of my friends are doing it. I got nervous. I said, okay, what are they doing? Said every one of my friends gets upset, and then they keep thinking about it, and talking about it, and thinking about it, and talking about it, and innocently they keep that feeling alive. That would be like if somebody came up and hit you with a baseball bat, and then they leave, and you grab the bat and keep hitting yourself on the head. And I realized that I have an anger bat, and I have a little teeny bat for worry. Right? I have my sad bat. Now, all of these feelings are normal, and there's nothing wrong with having any of them. And I still have all of these feelings, but it makes a difference where you think it comes from. Now, there's another aspect to this that I want to talk about. It not only makes a difference for you to know where it comes from, but it also makes a difference on how true you think your thinking is. So this is what Sid Banks called the illusion of thought. Right? Most people, when they get upset, think that what they're thinking is true. And often then when they start learning these principles, they go, well, it's just thought. It's true, but I don't have to think it. Right? So you look out the window and go, oh, it's a horrible day. It's raining. Oh, no. I wanted to do something today, and now it's raining. What a horrible day. Oh, that's just a thought. I don't have to think it. But it's true. Now I'm going to suggest to you that not a single thought you have is ultimate truth. It's just made up. It's an interpretation. It's a cloud. It's a little bundle of energy that's temporarily condensed and then falls away. What a difference it makes when you start realizing that when you're upset, what you're thinking isn't true. Here's an example. This was the first time I saw not only that it was thought, but that it wasn't true. I had a letter to mail, very important, and it needed to get into the mail right away so that it could go out and get to the person the next day. So I said, well, if I wait at my office until the postman comes, it won't get picked up until later in the afternoon. By the time it gets to the post office, it won't go out until the next day. It's got to go out today. And I said, oh, there's a mailbox down the street. When I go out to have lunch, I'll take the letter with me and mail the letter. Lunch came. I'm walking down the street. I was about 2 blocks away from my office, and I went, oh no. Guess what I forgot? That important letter was sitting back on my desk, knowing, oh, Dicken, that's so stupid. How could you have? And then all of a sudden, I woke up from that dream. It's like, wait a minute. Who says that someone is stupid just because they forget something? And I started laughing. It's beautiful to not only wake up to the fact of thought, but to wake up to the created reality of it. That it's not ultimate reality, it's just a made-up interpretation. Whatever you're thinking, it's a lousy day. Look at all the things people think are true. I'm unlovable. I can't do this, I'm not very good at this. This is really hard. Right? We have all these different thoughts. I'm good at this, I'm not good at that. I can remember for years, my wife is an amazing singer, and she's been part of singing groups. And we would get together with friends, and they would start singing, and I would go, oh no, they're gonna sing. I can't sing. Oh, here we go, la-di-da. I might as well go for a walk. Well, you guys have fun. So for years, I had the idea that I can't sing. One time, my wife came up to me, and she goes, Dicken, you like football, don't you? And I said, yeah, I love football. It's my favorite sport. She says, how many hours do you think you've played football? I said, I can't even begin to count. And she said, and you've had some good coaches too, haven't you? And I said, yeah, I sure have. I said, how many coaches do you think you've had over the years? I said, oh, a lot of coaches. Well, have they been good? Have they been helpful? And I said, yeah, they've really been helpful. I knew she was up to something. I couldn't quite figure it out. She goes, so, how many hours have you practiced singing? I said, well, I've never practiced singing. Well, how many coaches have you had? I mean, you've had coaches, right? Okay. I guess I can't say anymore. I guess I can't say anymore that I can't sing. Who knows? I'm just making that up. It's unbelievable what we make up and then think is true. You know how I used to judge how true something was? By how strongly I felt it. So if I was really angry, what I was making up in my head must really be true. If I was really afraid, what I was making up in my head, it must be true, because look at, I'm feeling this way. Consider for a moment. Consider for a moment. Rather than, I mean, it's fun to consider what would happen if you no longer had any of those thoughts in your head. Well, you'd be wide open, you'd be in the present moment, you'd be wide awake, you'd be full of love and enjoyment and happiness, you'd be like a little kid without a lot of limited, judgmental, conditioned thinking. But now let me add the twist. What happens if you still have all of that thought, but you no longer think any of it's true? What would that be like? What would happen if you weren't frightened by anything you thought or felt because it was just thought coming through? That you were in the present moment having thoughts coming through, but they didn't mean anything unless you wanted to consider them having meaning. That's a beautiful, beautiful metaphor, that when we're in a healthy state of mind, we're like the sky, and our thoughts are like the birds, and they're flying through, and the sky doesn't care whether it's a single bird or a whole flock. Doesn't care if the bird is a songbird or if it's squawking. A whole flock, sometimes I have whole flocks of squawking thought. Rah, rah! The crows. All right? And I'm really annoyed or bothered or frustrated or impatient. But what would happen if they can come through and you no longer believe that any of them were true? That's what happened to Sid Banks in my estimation. His first insight was that none of it ultimately is true. It's not reality. It's a temporary construct. It's an interpretation. It's made up. It's arbitrary. It's one thought out of a gazillion you could have about anything. It's very freeing. Very freeing when you begin to see what Sid Banks called the illusion of thought, so that you can literally wake up from your worst nightmares and go, oh, it really is just thought. Really is just thought. It always is just made up. And then you get to have fun with the fact that you think. And you get to enjoy your thinking, and you get to decide what thinking you want to get behind. It's very wonderful. And then you can feel anxious, and it doesn't frighten you, and it doesn't mean something's wrong with you, and it's just some birds flying through squawking. Beautiful. That's what I saw when I went out to the archipelago, to the island, is we got close to the shore, and all of a sudden this whole big flock of ducks flew up and flew over our heads. What would happen? I've been wondering about this. I've been thinking about this. What would happen if I didn't think anything I thought was true? Now, some people go, well, if you didn't think anything you thought was true, how would you live and what would you do? See, here's the good deal. The principle of mind says that all of us are connected to the intelligence behind all of life that knows how to create everything that exists, and it knows how to operate it. Right? Now, what I'm seeing about myself and the clients that I work with is that either when they have nothing on their mind, or when they have a lot on their mind but they don't pay any attention to it and it doesn't mean anything, they don't become passive, they don't become stupid, they don't become uncaring. They paradoxically and strangely enough become more present, more loving, more compassionate. Why is that? Because this intelligence behind life continues to live us when our personal thinking falls away. And it lives us beautifully. I think of wisdom. I think everybody is connected to this wisdom. And I think of wisdom as that when we're aligned with the nature of life, it knows how to live us beautifully. It will bring us all the thinking we need. It brings us the feelings that are helpful to us. It allows us to go through ups and downs, our own ups and downs, and other people's ups and downs. It knows how to do that. It knows how to solve our problems. I had a huge insight this year. I never have to try and figure out another problem. Ever. And decisions still get made. Isn't that interesting? It's really good news that all of us are connected to this intelligence. Right? So if I'm not thinking about something, things keep occurring to me. Oh, maybe I could do this or I could do that. But not only that, but when my head clears, or I'm not caught up in my thinking, or I don't think it's true, I'm just more like a little kid again. You know, when you're first born, you don't think anything you're thinking is true. You start having thoughts like, I watch my little grandkids, and I watch them sometimes start feeling, oh, I'm so stupid. 2 minutes later, it's gone. It doesn't exist. Oh, I can't do this. 2 minutes later, I can do it. Right? Because they don't really think it's true. And then gradually, what happens to all of us is we start paying more attention to the content. We start paying more attention to the content of our thinking and start thinking that what we think is true, and that's the beginning of all kinds of psychological suffering. Okay, I'll tell you some stories, because I think the best way to learn this is by stories. That's how I learned it. That's how Sid Banks taught it, was used mostly by stories. He says stories are the best medium for learning something like this, because the stories bypass your intellect. Right? They bypass your intellect, and if the point of the story is true or resonate as true for you. Okay, my son just got married August 2nd to a delightful woman that I love to pieces. She's fun, she's funny, she's spunky, she is delightful. She grew up going on extended week-long, 2-week-long backpacking trips with her parents into the mountains and into the wilderness. She's an avid lover of the outdoors. She's going to school to learn how to be an environmental educational teacher for young kids, to help them gain greater and greater appreciation for the outdoors. And my son came to me one day and he said, "Dad, could you talk to Autumn?" And I said, "About what?" And he said, "Well, she really is afraid of flying. And I mean, she's really afraid of flying." Right? Now, I didn't find out until later what he meant by that. It means when she gets on the airplane, she starts trembling. It means that when the airplane starts taking off, she curls up into a ball on her seat. It means when they start flying up, she starts crying. It means every time they hit turbulence, she gets terrified and breaks into tears. Now, you wouldn't know this if you met Autumn. She seems fearless. It's unbelievable what she does on these adventure trips. Right? You wouldn't know that she was so terrified. Now, her whole life, her mom was afraid of flying, and would talk about how scary it is, and how scary it is to be on a plane because you're completely out of control and you have no control over when the plane might crash. Remember how we've been talking about it makes a difference where you think your feelings come from? She honestly thought flying terrified her. She hadn't really seen that it was thought. Makes a big difference. If you know that it's your own thinking that's creating your feeling, it's never so frightening. Did you know people can't scare themselves? Did you know that? Babies can. They can cry. Rah, 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 rah. And they get scared by their own voice because they don't know it's coming from them. Right? It's the same reasoning behind you can't tickle yourself. Right? Like, if I go like this toward my wife, she freaks out. It's like, oh no. And if I can touch her, she just starts laughing hysterically. And I say, okay, take your own finger and put it right there and try and tickle yourself. She can't tickle herself. It's very different when you know it's coming from you, 100%. Very different. Like, I can't scare myself. I can't go, Dicken. Tonight when you're not looking, I'm gonna get you. Whoa! Isn't that something? And yet I used to be terrified of the dark. Terrified. I can remember as a little kid, I had it all. There was a guy in my closet who would only come out at night. And it was hard to catch him, but he was in there. And there was somebody under my bed, so if my foot went out under, I could get pulled under. Right? I can't tell you how many kids I've worked with who have natural fears, but the reason why the fears become terrifying fears as opposed to just normal fears is that they begin to lose, at a certain age, you begin to think that your fear is coming from something out there rather than it's just thought. When I've worked with kids who have nightmares on a regular basis, I swear to God, the instant they realize that fear is created from thought, they stop having nightmares. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so Autumn is caught in a daymare, and it seems real, and it seems like it has to do with the airplane and being out of control. So we were visiting Autumn, and she comes up to me and she says, Dicken, I would love to talk with you, and I have this fear of flying, and I have to go next week to a family reunion, and I have to fly to it, and I'm dreading going on the plane. It's such a painful experience for me. And I said, well, I'll be glad to talk to you. And we just talked. Right? And it's no surprise that she thought her fear came from the plane and being out of control, that she doesn't have any control over what happens to the plane. Now, as we talked, and all I was doing was beginning to help her have a deeper understanding that every feeling she has is created from thought, not just some of them. Every feeling is the only way a human being can have any feeling. You have to have a sad thought to have a sad feeling. If you have a happy thought, you're not going to have a sad feeling. All right? You have a loving thought, you have a loving feeling. Whatever thoughts are created within you, you will feel. You can't not do that. That's how we're wired up. The variable is whether you know where it's coming from or not. How seriously you think what you're thinking is true. Right? Now, sometimes when I'm talking to people, I can see them have an insight. And I saw Autumn when it hit her, not intellectually, when she started to realize that her fear was created from thought. You know how I could tell she had the insight? She said to me, I'm actually looking forward to getting on the plane now. Right? That's somebody who suddenly lost their fear of their own experience. You know, and we were talking because she loves to go out into the mountains and hike. And I say, well, Autumn, when you're hiking in the mountains, you go through a lot of different weather conditions, don't you? She said, yeah. And I said, well, sometimes you have really severe storms when you're out there backpacking in the mountains, don't you? And she says, yeah, it's not uncommon. And I said, you don't freak out when there's a storm, do you? She says, no, I know what to do. I know how to handle it. I know that I can just put my attention on doing things that sort of take care of things during the storm. I know where to pitch the tent, where it's safe and where it's not. I know exactly what I need to do. I said, well, it's the same with thought. You're a free thinker. You're free to think whatever you want. And wherever your thinking goes, you're going to experience it. So she has this insight. She says, well, I'm actually looking forward to flying. My wife and Autumn and I were walking down the street the next morning, and I see a store, and I felt a very strong urge to go in this store, and I had no idea why. So I said to my wife and Autumn, you guys go ahead, I'll catch up to you. I want to go in this store. And I'm walking around this store, and they have big racks of cards. And I found a card, and on the front of a card was a photograph of a little kid in a car he had built. And he had built a ramp, and he was going off the ramp, and the car was flying through the air, and the kid was like this in the car. And it said, it had a quote from Helen Keller, you know, life is an adventure, embrace it. So I wrote in this card some things about what we had talked about. And then I sealed the card in the envelope. And I wrote on the card, Autumn, Do not open until you're on the plane. Dicken. And I gave her the card. 2 days later, she flew. By that time, I was doing a training in Los Angeles. At 5:30 in the morning, I thought I heard my phone go ding. When I got up a little later, I looked at the phone, and it was a text from Autumn with a picture. And she had taken a picture of herself smiling on the plane. And she said, I'm about to open your card. 7:30 in the morning, I get a phone call, and she had just landed. And she was like a little kid at Christmas. She said, Dicken, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I smiled my way through the whole trip. I looked around, and most people were like way more nervous than I was. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Right? Isn't that something? That something that had been a fear for her for a really long time, with one insight, can change because she realized more deeply the nature of it and where it was coming from. And she stopped taking that thinking to be true. She said she got off the plane, was jumping up and down on the tarmac. She said there was a woman next to me who started to freak out, and I actually was calming her down. That's never happened. My son called me up about half an hour later. I just talked to Autumn. I can't believe it. Yeah. That's just one example of someone having an insight about where feelings come from and the nature of thought, which is illusory. She just flew on her honeymoon to Barcelona. She had to take 3 long flights there. I couldn't wait to find out how that went. And I just talked to her a couple days ago. I said, so Autumn, how was your flight? She said, I am going to put Ben on. He is so proud of me. Puts my son on. I said, okay, Ben, what happened? He said, she was great. She was great. We went through turbulence, and she didn't freak out. Except once. Except once. She was sound asleep. And the plane hit turbulence and suddenly dropped. And she woke up, immediately went into a fetal position and grabbed my son. And Ben looked at her and just said, Autumn, it's okay. This will pass. It's okay. And then she remembered, because you can forget really easily. She remembered, oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's just thought. It's just a movie running in my head. See, I didn't know if you were in a movie. I didn't know if you were in a movie. If you don't like the movie, you don't have to keep watching it. Most people, when I see them upset, keep thinking and focusing on it and thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. Like my daughter said, Dad, all of my friends do it. They keep focusing on it and thinking about it and talking about it and thinking about it and talking about it. Do you know why I like the word illusion? The illusion of thought. Illusion means things aren't as they appear to be. Like one classic example of that. We're on vacation on an island in Maine, and I like to go for walks late at night, especially if there's a moon out, and go through the trails of this island, because at night all the animals come out, so you can see moose and deer and owls and porcupines and all kinds of things. And I'm walking through, and I'm about to step down, and I look, and there's this huge snake across the trail. And I'm just about to step on it, and if there was an event in the Olympics, the backwards broad jump, Gold medal. I jumped way back, grabbed my flashlight, put it right on the snake, and it was a log. It was a stick. That's an illusion. I thought it was one thing and it was something else. I tell you, we get tricked every day. There's only one trick. There's only one trick. At times during the day, you're going to think what you're thinking is true and you'll be tricked. Now, if you look at it more closely, you can't find that thought. You can't even find the feeling. If you look right at it, it dissolves because it's just like a cloud. It's a temporary condensation of energy. Literally, that's all it is. That's all thought is. That's formed thought. Another illusion is like a mirage. One time on vacation, we were driving through the desert in the United States, and all of a sudden it was just like they say. It's like it looked like there was a huge lake out in front of us. The only problem was you keep driving and driving, you never get to the lake. It's just an illusion created. To begin to see the illusion of thought is very powerful. So let me give another example. I'm working with the CEO of an extremely large company, they would get multi-million-dollar contracts on a regular basis. And the CEO was a wonderful guy. I really liked him. And we got to know each other. And when I first met him, he was living with extreme levels of stress. So like one day after work, I went with him we were in a hotel at a training that I did for his company. We go down to the bar and I see him order a double martini. And you'd think it was a glass of water. And he got a second double martini. I'm this far through my drink. He has a third double martini. Now it's just like 6 drinks, right? No effect apparent. His voice didn't change, because he'd been doing this so long, he was acclimated to it. Do you know what would happen to me if I had 3 double martinis in a row? I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. But that's what he felt like he needed to do to help de-stress, because he was living at such high levels of stress. Okay, I have an opportunity to do one-on-one individual coaching with him. And as soon as I can, I start talking to him about these principles. We all live in the world of thought. Whatever you think, consciousness is going to bring it to life and make it seem real to you. Seem real to you. That's what consciousness does. And we're all connected to a deeper intelligence. We all have the capacity for wisdom and common sense and love and compassion and understanding, and it's hardwired and built into all of us. We worked together for a little while and he became more and more relaxed. Because when you realize that your stress is not caused by circumstance, you begin to realize it's thought, and if it's just thought, it's not so frightening, and you begin to relax because you see that when you relax and your thinking clears away, the stress goes away. And you begin to realize it's not really circumstantial, I thought it was. If you think a circumstance causes you upset or stress, whenever you're in that circumstance, there's an extremely high likelihood you're going to feel whatever you typically feel by habit. If you think a certain family member makes you really upset, whenever you're with that person, there's a good chance you're going to get upset. That happened to me. There was one person in my family who said, It really is them. Right? This is the exception to the 100% rule. Okay, so this CEO comes up to me and he says, Dicken, I now realize how much thinking and stress I was living in and how little I understood where it was really coming from. And I can't tell you, I feel a fraction of the stress that I used to feel. And as my stress is going away, I automatically begin to feel better and think better. So it's unbelievable how much I'm enjoying my job now. And I was really at the point where I thought I was going to have to leave this kind of work because it was taking too much. It really started to affect his physical health big time. He said, Dicken, before I learned these principles, if I thought about the moment in my life when I felt the most relaxed, it would be one time with my grandson. I had him on my chest as a baby, and I laid down on a couch in my house, and the two of us fell asleep together, and I've never felt so much peace of mind in my whole life. He says, you know what? I have that same experience about 50 times a day now. That's the power of beginning to see where feelings come from. That's the power of beginning to not only see where it's coming from, but see the illusory nature of it, so you don't think that, well, it's true and I don't have to think it. It's not true. It's not truth. Right? The thought that I had, oh, I'm so stupid because I forgot, that's not true. It's just made up. Any thought you have ultimately is just made up. When it falls away, you don't become passive, then wisdom lives you beautifully. In sports, when your head clears of everything you're thinking, the less thinking you have in your mind, you don't become passive, you become totally in the zone, you're in the game. Your head is in the game. I had coaches that would say, Dicken, sit down on the bench for a while. You need to get your head back into the game. You need to get your head back into the game. I tell you, it's extremely liberating when you begin to not take the content of your thinking to be ultimate truth. It's really helpful. Sid Banks used to say things like, if you're listening to someone talk, pay no attention to their words. Don't listen to their words. Or he'd say, when I talk, don't listen to my words. And for a long time, we didn't understand what he meant. We said, wait a minute, we're coming here to hear what you have to say. What do you mean, don't listen to my words? Well, here's the deal. If I'm with somebody and they're talking to me, and I'm not paying attention to their words, I don't start thinking that every word they say is truth, and I don't start thinking about what they're saying. You know what that means? I just have less thinking on my mind. You know what happens when you listen to people with less thinking on your mind? They feel like you're really listening to them. And you are. Because you can't think and listen at the same time. My wife used to say to me, Dicken, you're not listening to me. Because I had so much thinking on my mind. I say, yes, I am. She said, no, you're not. I said, I've taken courses. How many have you taken? I'm doing everything they say to do and listening. I could mirror her language. I could do all kinds of things. She says, you're not listening. I can tell. It wasn't until later I began to realize how much thinking I had on my mind when I was with people when they were talking. And then I woke up and that's thought. And as that began to fall away, when you really become aware of the fact of thought, whatever you're thinking begins to quiet down and fall away. If you really see it, it begins to just, as Jamie said earlier, if you really see thought, it throws you back into the present moment. You know how Sid defined the present moment? Any moment of awareness that's free of the contamination of your conceptual mind. Any moment of awareness that's free of the contamination of the conceptual mind. So if you don't take your thinking to be true, do you know what that means? You become free of judgments, because we have a lot of judgments in our thinking. You become free of shoulds. You stop being influenced. I should do this, I should do that, you should do this, you shouldn't do this. This shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be raining. You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't treat me this way. You shouldn't. People who live in the world of shoulds are thoughts that create an enormous amount of dissatisfaction and stress. Right? When you begin to be free of the content of your thinking, you get free of judgments, shoulds, thoughts of limitation. I can't do this. I'm no good at this. You're no good at that. Right? All that thinking begins to dissipate. Contaminated mind, when that falls away, when that's not listened to, pure mind. You know what pure mind is? It's love. You know what pure consciousness is? It's love. Pure thought is love. Now, I have seen no exception to this. I've worked with people who have been mandated to see me from prison. I've worked with people who have had a lifetime of psychological suffering. I've worked with people who have been in and out of state hospitals. I've worked with ordinary people who are just paralyzed by their own anxiety and insecurity. And no exception. This is the beautiful thing about human beings. As that thinking clears away, I have seen no exception. People start to feel better, and the quality of their thinking improves. When we feel better, we feel more connected to life and to people. That's why we can talk about love being fundamental to all of us. It's built into us as our nature. That's no different than saying when the clouds and the storms part, there's blue sky, and in that blue sky there's a sun that brings warmth and nourishment. In spiritual teaching, wisdom is often, the metaphor for wisdom is often light. You become enlightened. More light means more love, more understanding, more compassion. Everybody I know exhibits love and compassion and understanding as they fall out of the influence of their conceptual mind. When they're not being influenced by their conceptual mind, we stand free. We stand free. Free of the contamination of our own thinking, free of the distortion of our own thinking, free of the judgments within our own thinking. All right? Then wisdom lives us beautifully. It talks us, it moves us, it tells us when to go to sleep, when to get up, when to move. It just picks us up and moves us. It does a good job. All right? That's why they say when your ego gets out of the way, wisdom lives you beautifully. Your ego is when you're wedded to your own personal thinking and think it's true. And then you become limited by something that's just an illusion. You became limited in the same way I was sure it was a snake. I was sure there was a lake in the desert. I was sure I was stupid. Autumn was sure that it was the plane terrifying her. The CEO was sure that his stress came from the amount of responsibility he had. What's it look like to be free of the influence of your conceptual mind? My last story. This was actually the story that when I remembered it and thought about it was why I wanted to talk to you and what it was I really wanted to talk to you. It came from this story. I have 2 grandkids, Jacob and Eva. Jacob is 10, little Eva is 6. One time I'm putting Eva to bed, and I love putting her to bed. She cracks me up. She is so funny and fun. She is just one of the happiest little kids that I know. And so she picked out some books for me to read, and I'm reading one book, and she picked it because it's a pretty funny book. So I'm reading it to her, and all of a sudden we come to the funny part, and she starts laughing and I start laughing. And we're looking right at each other, laughing. It's so beautiful to share laughter with people and be looking right in their eyes. It's just like, boy, talk about love, talk about connecting, talk about the absence of shoulds and judgments and barriers and limitation. It's just connecting, free of the contamination of our conceptual mind. Now here's the cool part. I'm reading through and I come to a part that's not funny, and she starts laughing and she's looking at me. And I read another sentence, she laughs even harder, and it's not funny. And she cracked me up, so I start laughing. And then she laughs harder. And then we're just laughing, laughing, laughing. Pretty soon, every sentence, we're cracking up. I couldn't stop thinking about that. What happened? Why doesn't that happen in all of our relationships? Why can't we connect beyond the words? Why can't we get out of the contamination of our thinking and enjoy one another as we are? I know that's possible because I now get a kick out of people that I used to think drove me crazy. I now can work with someone who is really troubled, and maybe we're not laughing, but I can connect on a level beyond the words. That's what I'm looking for. That's how I see mentoring, is 2 people who are students to life looking for a deeper connection and waking up to the illusory nature of thought, and then you become freer and freer of the contamination and influence of your own thinking. And it makes it easier for you to enjoy life. That's literally what I see happen. As people get healthier, they start enjoying life more, they stop taking things so personally, they start seeing that if other people are really being unloving, that they're innocently caught up in their own thinking and it seems real to them, and we all know what that's like, so how can you judge someone else for getting tricked? And as everybody here has mentioned, and me too, we all get tricked. There's times when I get annoyed and I really think it is the weather or the traffic or my grandkids even, because I lose sight of the true nature of life and how it actually is working. And then you wake up and you remember. My wish for all of you is that you continue to wake up out of your daymares. You begin to question the truth of anything you think when you're really having a difficult time. And see what happens when that thinking begins to influence you less and fall away. If it doesn't influence you, it just comes and goes naturally like it did when we were little kids. It's not truth anymore. It's just a temporary made-up thought. It's one interpretation out of a gazillion possible interpretations. There must be a better interpretation. And when we let go, this is a spiritual truth. This is a psychological truth. When people let go of, or that thinking falls away that's very judgmental, it gets replaced by new thinking that's less judgmental, more understanding, more kind-hearted. Those of you who are parents will understand this. You can be really upset with your kid. You walk in the other room, give yourself a timeout rather than give the kid the timeout, the true meaning of timeouts, so the parent can let their thinking relax and get their bearings back, right? Otherwise, we're trying to parent from that place where we want to ground our kids for life, right? It falls away, you get more understanding, and then you deal with it. You deal with whatever you need to deal with, but it comes from a different place and with a different feeling. See how that works? You wake up to the illusion. It keeps opening up, opening up. You become more and more open-minded, less and less wedded to your own thinking, less and less wedded to negative thought, less and less thinking that the stronger you feel it, the more true it must be. The opposite is actually true. The opposite is true. Like Sid said, the ego always gets it backwards. All right? From the ego's perspective, I feel it so strongly, it must be true. I hate you, you're a jerk, and that's true. Right? The plane is terrifying me, and that's true. You will never convince me otherwise. Well, you can't convince people otherwise. But everybody can wake up to it. That's the good news. Everybody. Everybody. I can't predict anymore who's going to wake up and when. But I know everybody is a thought away from waking up, seeing it differently, losing their fear of their own experience, falling into the present moment more fully, free of the influence of your conceptual mind, and then filling up with love and compassion and wisdom. That's the beauty. That's what we're all hardwired for. So that's all I got to say. It's my story, and I'm not sticking to it.